If you'll join with me in our sermon today, our message and the reading for it comes to us out of Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. And here's what Luke writes for us. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister's left me to work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things. But few things are needed, or indeed really only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So we've been looking at this series, and really out of a book John Ortberg has written. It's called God is Closer Than You Think. And we're trying to see that within our lives, that we can be people who are growing closer to God as we increase our capacity to experience God's presence in our daily living, in our moment-by-moment living. It's just that awareness of God's presence. And last week we looked at some things that were kind of hard, because really sometimes we feel like the Lord is very close to us. And other times it seems like the Lord is a million miles away. And we talked about that last week. And yet what God is He's present no matter what and how we're feeling in those situations. And so we just looked at some ways to maybe draw close to God still, even when God feels like it's a long way away. But today we're going to look again at some things that keep us, I think, from living in the awareness of God's presence moment by moment within our lives. And today I'm hoping that we can again do something called the DTR, define the relationship, that we can define the relationship with Jesus again within our lives and who we are going to be. See, the DTR talk is really a call for relational clarity. It's to say, is this a casual relationship or is this a serious relationship? Now, when I was growing up as a younger man, I avoided the DTR talk as much as possible all the time. That's just the way it was for me. I never wanted to have that serious kind of talk. And then I met Kathy, and we were both through college, and we both had jobs. And as I started to spend time with her, she made my heart go pitter, pitter, pat, okay? And all of a sudden, I find myself, the one who avoided the DTR talk in any possible way, I'm having the DTR talk with her. And I sit down and I say, well, Kathy, and I stumble my way through it. And I'm like, so, what do you think? And she goes, about what? And I said, well, about me. She said, well, I think you're neat. And I was like, well, thank you, I think. I'm not sure how to even take that one. And I said, but no, what I'm really trying to say is, what about us? Is this exclusive? Or what is this? And we decided, hey, let's make this exclusive. And, 25, 26 years later, here we are at this place. And it's very interesting. If you look at Jesus and his encounters with people, he was always having a DTR talk with them, defining the relationship. You see, people didn't go away from Jesus saying, well, Jesus, that was a nice talk, but I really don't know where I stand or where you want me to be in this relationship with you. He was always right there, relentlessly just trying to bring them into this relationship. Let's define this thing. And he's constantly calling people, hey, believe in me. Come follow me. Come be like me. His whole thing was about drawing deeper into that relationship. Like in Luke 5, where we find out Jesus calls the disciples, hey, come and follow me, and they do so. Or like Luke chapter 9 or 14, where Jesus really starts to set some parameters around this idea of being a disciple, that you always come to Jesus on Jesus' terms and not on your own terms. And this is something to think about. Jesus said, hey, if you want to be my disciple, what you have to do? You have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. See, there's certain things that go along with this thing. Consider the cost of what this is to come be with me. It's always about Jesus' terms, and yet Jesus calls us to define that relationship and move into this time. And probably the biggest one that we hear about is like maybe Luke chapter 18, where this man, he's just known as the rich young man, and he comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, come on, sell everything you have, give it away to the poor, and come and follow me. We're going to change the world. And he says, no, I can't do that. I can't I can't, Jesus, you're cool and everything, but I just can't commit to that kind of relationship. I just can't do that. So Jesus wants us always to define our relationship and be in the process of doing so. So here we are, as Jesus constantly sought relational clarity. Casual, light, and surface level did not cut it. He always wanted us to go deeper. So today I'm hoping that we can begin to define our relationship with Jesus again, and we're going to do so as we look at the story of Martha and Mary, as they offer hospitality to Jesus and probably to Jesus' followers as well. See, this is a story about being with Jesus. It's a story about proximity. Yes, they were in the same house as Jesus was, the same general area, but also about intimacy. And what I mean by that is their awareness of Jesus and also, I guess, paying attention to Jesus in the midst of it. Now, if I started a story of talking, our 25 years being together, probably the one thing that I've heard more often in those 25 years is, and I could be sitting in the same room as Kathy, and she would say, Tom, you're not paying good attention to me. Anybody ever heard that from someone before? That's the thing I hear. You're not paying good attention to me. And as a younger person, I was kind of a rookie at being a husband. And I would say, well, what do you mean? I'm in the same room as you. What more do you want? I mean, my goodness. And she's like, no, you need to pay attention to me when we're here. You see, proximity doesn't matter. You're a million miles away doing your thing, even though you're sitting 5 feet away from me. You see, this is what we're going to see today. Martha is in the same area as Jesus, but she's a million miles away. Mary is right there with her attention focused on Jesus. Very different. Proximity is different from awareness and attention. So Luke tells us that Martha and Mary have opened their home to Jesus, probably as disciples. They're in the same proximity, but of course, like I just said, they are a million miles apart. Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet while Martha is busy and distracted in the kitchen area. See, sitting at Jesus' feet is more than a description of Mary's location in the room. To sit at someone's feet meant to take the position of a disciple. And this is important that we understand this. In Acts chapter 22, Paul is sharing his credentials with some Jewish persons, and he says, I was born a Jew. I was born in Tarsus, but I was raised right here and brought up right here in Jerusalem at the feet of Gamaliel. You see, I was a disciple of his, and I was educated, and I was raised, and I was a disciple of his. And this is who I am. See, Mary has made a fundamental choice to be with Jesus, giving her attention to Jesus, and literally surrendering herself as a disciple to Jesus. Now, a few years ago, I did Not a Fan as a kind of a sermon series as well. And they talked about rabbis back then, and there was a rabbinical saying. And this is what rabbis would say, because people wanted to be as close to their rabbi, their teacher, as they could possibly be. And the saying was this: may you always be covered by the dust of your rabbi. Follow so closely that the dust of his feet settles into your clothing and lines your face. And that's a neat little thing, walking in the dust of our Rabbi Jesus. You see, Jesus invites us into this closeness of relationship to live so much in his presence that we are, I guess, dusty people. And that's who we can be and should be. And Jesus commends Mary's choice. She has chosen the one thing, the better thing, the most important thing, and it will not be taken from her. Her attention upon Jesus, no matter what's happening around her. And I might just say this. This is not my sermon for the day, but I'll throw this in there. Guess how many female disciples there were following rabbis until Jesus' day? I'll show you. You can count them on 0 fingers, okay? So Jesus shows up. This is so amazing. Jesus just literally shows up, and we find out that he makes God's presence scandalously available to anyone who wants it. Anyone. Doesn't matter. Available to anyone. Of course, we have to seek it. We have to accept it on Jesus' terms, in terms of the parameters that are there, but he makes it scandalously available to everyone. So I don't care about gender and age and background and place and status and race and orientation, and you can go on and on and on. It does not matter. Jesus says, here it is. So again, today we're going to look at what things are keeping us from that awareness and deeper relationship with Jesus. And really, verse 40 becomes the key. Luke tells us that Martha was, are you ready for the word? Distracted. Doesn't say she was too busy. Doesn't say that she was overextended. It doesn't say that Jesus came in and said, hey, Martha, how about you fix up some grub for me and the boys now that we're here? No, that's things Jesus didn't say, honestly. Okay? She was distracted. So I looked up the definition of distraction. It's very interesting. I think this is a good picture of it. Distracted means having one's thoughts and attention drawn away to give attention to something else. As if her intent was to be with Jesus, to give her full attention to Jesus, but she allowed herself to be distracted and drawn away. Why? Well, we're not sure. Maybe there were some cultural expectations that she thought she had to live by. I invited somebody in my home. I've got to make sure it's clean. I've got to make sure food is out there for her. Maybe it's some issues. Maybe she had to always be busy. Who knows what was going on with her in her life? We all have our little neurotic places, don't we? What's driving her to distraction and frustration instead of attention upon Jesus? Here's our question. What drives us to distraction today? What are you allowing to distract you and your attention away from being fully aware of Jesus' presence in the midst of all your living? I mean, how often do we get distracted, which leads to our frustration and our moment-by-moment living, and then when our attention to God's presence, if it would be there, it would change everything, because it always changes the entire atmosphere when we are aware of God's presence no matter what's going on. And finally, in her frustration, she cries out. She's mad at Mary. She's probably really mad at Jesus, too, in what she says, but she says, Jesus, do something. Don't you care that she's left me to do this? You're the one who's supposed to be taking care of this situation. Do something. And then Jesus shares this amazing truth with her. And I think it was in love that Jesus starts this. And he says, Martha, Martha. You know, if a name gets repeated in the scripture, it's a powerful thing for us. We're supposed to get a hold of this. Last week we talked about Moses at the burning bush. And what did God say to him? Moses, Moses. He's trying to get Moses' attention. When you get the name repeated twice, there's intention there. Jesus, even later on in the ministry, he talks to Simon Peter. He says, Simon, Simon, the Lord is Satan wants to sift you like wheat, but I've come here and I'm going to take care of you, and we're going to go through this. Or maybe Paul, the Apostle Paul, whose name was Saul before that, and he's persecuting the church, the early church, Jesus' followers, and one day he's marching off to go do some more persecution on the road to Damascus, not to Damascus, the road to somebody, What? Never mind. Yeah, see, I knew. So here he is. He's marching off to the road. That's not a big part of the story. This is the big part coming up. So he's marching off on the road, and Jesus, the risen Jesus, is there and knocks him off his horse, and he says, Saul, Saul, I'm trying to get your attention. So Jesus looks over to Martha and says, Martha, Martha, give me your attention here. Bring it in. See, Jesus diagnoses the problem with surgical precision. What keeps one from his presence, from attention upon Jesus' presence, it's not busyness. It's not having lots of things to do. It's distraction and a lack of attention. One thing is needed, the decision to live always in my presence. Discipleship. Give your attention to this relationship no matter what's happening moment by moment. Now, sometimes sitting at Jesus' feet means to stop, to cease, to rest. Why do we come to church? This is why we would come to church, because we stop, we focus in, we center ourselves. We say, okay, Jesus, we're focused on you. We're going to move through this week, and here's where we're going. But as a general rule, we do not have to stop doing in order to be with Jesus. We simply have to invite Jesus into what we're doing, which makes good sense. So Jesus describes probably one of the greatest obstacles there is to being aware of his presence moment by moment, and it's distraction. It's not doing bad things. It's not being a bad person. It's just being distracted and allowing things to draw our attention away. And so he tells Martha, Mary's chosen what's better. In fact, be like her. Give me your attention. Learn, draw near. Let my dust settle into your clothing and into the lines of your face. See, I believe Martha could have been busy and very attentive to Jesus at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, but for her, she was distracted and it became a problem. So what distracts you? What are your distractions that keep you from being attentive and aware of Jesus' presence right there with you 24/7, moment by moment? I mean, how can we train ourselves to not let distractions draw us away? And I thought, one of these things, and I probably really need to take a look at this, is about paying attention. And maybe even this, maybe it's a note to self, pay attention. Maybe you should put about 20 or 30 of these up at the office, in the car, at home, on the fridge, bathroom mirror, wherever it is. Pay attention. Jesus is here. And here's where we're going. Because some of those common distractions are our busyness, it's our fear maybe, it's our apathy, it's our hobbies, or maybe one of these next words. And I know nobody really has a problem with this, but some people actually do. And it's what Jesus says in verse 41. And he says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about so many things. Anybody here ever been worried before? I'll tell you why we get worried. It's because we're not omnipotent. We don't know all. We're not all powerful. We're created beings stuck in time. And it brings us to this place where we worry. How often do we live under the illusion that worry enhances our ability to control things? I'm going to repeat that, okay? Everybody listening? How often do we live under the illusion that worry enhances our ability to control things? Anybody here like to control things? I'm the only one? My goodness, no. Worry and trust don't get along. I read Matthew 6, or had it read for you today because I wanted you to see and hear what Jesus says. Don't worry about all these things. God's going to take care of you. Give your life. Seek first the kingdom of God, and God's going to take care of these things. How much by worrying do you think you can do? You can't add a single hour to your life through worrying. He gets to the end, he says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own problems. You worry about today, which has its problems, okay? You just focus on me being present in the present moment. We're going to get through this no matter what chaos is happening around us. We are right here together, and we're going to get through this thing. Tomorrow, you can worry about tomorrow. See, worry does no good in those situations. So how do I stop worrying, preacher? Well, here it is. You ready? We learn the art of letting go. Ooh, doesn't it sound like fun? Now, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to give you a sports analogy on this part. Is that okay? I know. Oh, my gosh. How many of you ever been watching a baseball game maybe, or you're watching a golf match, and they swing and they hit the ball, and after they hit the ball, they go like this. Go, 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 go. Have you ever seen that before? We have to learn to let things go. See, here's the reality, and I can tell you by experience, when you hit the ball poorly, no matter how much leaning and going like this and yelling at the ball, it's still going to go in the sand trap or in the water. It doesn't matter. You know why? Here's why. This little thing called physics is now taken over, and you can't stop it. It's out of your control. You have to just let it go. But it's kind of like that within life for ourselves. There are some things that we cannot change, and we have to accept it. We have to let it go and walk in Jesus' presence in the midst of it. I mean, there are some things you can do. If I'm golfing, I make sure my feet are right and my swing is proper and I follow through the way that I'm supposed to. But once I hit that ball, I've got to let it go because I can't change it. I cannot change it. So maybe our to-do list should be this one right here. Are you ready? To-do list. Let it go. Trust God. Give Jesus your attention. But there's all kinds of stuff going on, preacher. Let it go. Trust God. Give Jesus your attention. Oh, okay. Is that what Jesus wants me to do? Oh. See, the great danger of worry is it keeps us troubled and distracted instead of sitting at the feet of Jesus, the one who loves us and desires us to be aware of his presence in our life moment by moment by moment. But even sitting at Jesus' feet doesn't mean just complete passivity. It means I'm attentive to Jesus. I'm a disciple. I'm surrendering. I'm trusting. I'm growing closer, resting in his presence, trusting in the midst of his life. Psalm 46, if you've ever been a part of one of my funeral services, I always have Psalm 46 in there because it's an amazing psalm. It simply says this: God is our refuge and our strength and ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore, I will not fear. Refuge and strength. This is powerful for us. You see, when the psalmist writes this, and he says that God is a refuge and a strength within our lives, he's not saying this so that we can escape life. He's saying God is a refuge and a strength in the midst of life. Chaos, storms, all kinds of things happening. We don't like it. It doesn't say God goes, okay, come on, let's go hide out in this cave. There's nothing happening out. Don't worry about it. It's okay. No, what he says is God is a refuge right in the midst of the storm. Waiting for God is strength for us to sustain us right in the midst of living and everything that's there. Therefore, we do not fear. So we can either focus on the storm and the chaos, or we can focus on Jesus' presence being a refuge and a strength in our lives. Big difference. Too often we try so hard to not worry. Anybody ever tried to not worry and you end up worrying more? That's just what we do. That's how it is. See, the answer is to not try and stop worrying. The answer is to give attention to Jesus and Jesus' presence, because everything is better when you're aware of the presence of Jesus. It changes the atmosphere, that relationship of love. So as we finish here today, as we think about it being distracted, as we think about worry within our lives, let's think about Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus in the place of a disciple, the position of a disciple. You know, as a disciple, it means Jesus' lordship and our discipleship, which is our surrender and our focus upon Jesus. It's about our letting go, trusting God, and focusing on the presence of Jesus. So as we finish here today, I don't know what we all have that's going on within our lives, but I'm pretty sure that we all have places of distraction and worry and all these things. So this is what I want us to do. I'm going to have a little prayer here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to read it once, and then I'm going to let you guys pray for a minute with it. The worship team is going to come up, and we got a final song, and it's really a song of prayer and commitment anyway. But now I want you to think, what areas do I need to surrender in the midst of this? With my fear, my distraction, my worry, whatever it might be. So here's the simple prayer. Maybe. Oh, there it is. God, I place you in charge, and I no longer have to try to manage and control everything. But I will rest in your presence, trust in your leading, and simply be obedient.